Hello, and welcome to Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Thank you for stopping by. You know that I am fascinated with disappearances, especially disappearances with strange circumstances where the person vanishes into thin air or leaves some type of cryptic clue before disappearing. Even more fascinating is when the disappeared person turns up dead, and there are no clues as to what happened to them, even with a body being found. When my channel was called Dining with Death, I had a whole playlist of people who disappeared. Some of those people have been found, but most have not. Today, I'm going to share stories with you that have haunted me. The stories we are talking about today are so bizarre and so disturbing that from the moment I heard them, they've stayed with me. This is a series I will add to in the future because every day a shocking number of people vanish from the face of the earth and are never found, but often there is a history of mental illness or drug use, something that would perhaps explain the disappearances. But in the stories I have for you today, there are more questions than answers. The last story is from right here in Utah and involves two members of the same family going missing years apart. It's a very strange case. Today, we are talking about bizarre disappearances. I'm your host, Stacy Lee. Let's begin. Our first story begins in Omaha, Nebraska. 19-year-old Jason Jolkowski was scheduled to work his job at Fazoli's, which is an Italian fast food restaurant, or was. I don't know if Fazoli's still exists. We used to have one here in St. George, but it closed years ago. It's June 13th, 2001, and Jason gets a call from his manager asking him to come in early for work. Jason's car is in the shop having work done, so he was planning on walking to work, which was 4 miles from his house. When he got called to work early, he called a friend of his, a coworker, and asked if he could catch a ride with him. The coworker said yes and told Jason to meet him here at Benson High School, which was kind of a halfway point between the two houses. Both Jason and his friend had attended Benson High School before graduating. The high school was 8 blocks from Jason's house, so a little bit of a walk, but much less than the 4 miles to where he worked. It would take Jason about 10 minutes to walk from his house to the high school. Jason was a shy and quiet kid who had a small group of friends. He had dreams of becoming a radio DJ for the local station KIWR, and he was attending Iowa Western Community College studying radio broadcasting, but he was only in school part-time. And in June of 2001, he was home for the summer, living with his parents in the Benson neighborhood of Omaha. At 10:45 a.m., Jason was seen by a neighbor who saw Jason helping his younger brother pull trash cans from the curb back up to the Jolkowski house. Jason then took off walking towards Benson High School to meet his coworker. 30 to 40 minutes later, Jason's coworker called the Jolkowski house, stating that he was waiting for Jason at the high school and Jason had not turned up as planned. Immediately, the alarms were raised by Jason's parents, but they were told by the police that nothing could be done for 24 hours. These parents have since fought to change this law. Now, this is a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs. It was a relatively short walk. It was the middle of the day. Jason's parents and then friends and neighbors immediately got into their cars and began to trace the path that Jason would have taken to walk to the high school. You can see here the path is very straight and it's on the main roads. He wasn't trekking through the back roads or fields to get where he was going. People drove the route over and over. Jason was nowhere to be found. The police pulled the surveillance footage from cameras at the high school. Jason is never seen on that footage. He never arrived at the high school. This kid literally vanished while walking on the sidewalk. A week went by and then a month. There was no sign of Jason. A year passed and then 5 and then 10. And now over 20 years later, we still have no idea what happened to Jason Jolkowski. There has been no body found, not a single clue, not a single suspect. How does a 19-year-old man vanish while on a short walk in his own neighborhood in the middle of the day? One of the officers working the case said it is the most baffling case of his 30-year career. To not have a single lead, not a witness, no one saw anything in the middle of the day is simply bizarre. Jason's car remained in the shop, his paycheck was never picked up, and he never again accessed his bank account. Jason didn't do drugs, he didn't drink, and he had only $60 on him when he disappeared. The police believe foul play is involved, but they simply have nothing to go on. It is very strange. I've done a lot of stories on disappearances, and there's usually someone that sees something, or there's some sort of a clue. There's something found later in the person's bedroom that says, they're planning on disappearing. None of that is present in this case. Jason vanished like a puff of smoke. I hope one day we have answers, but something tells me that we probably will not. This story begins on September 6th, 2015 in Minnesota. Henry McCabe is out having a night with his friends. They were having drinks here at a club called Pavlitsky's. I hope I'm saying that right. Pavlitsky's on 65, which is in Spring Lake Park. Henry's wife and 2 kids were visiting some family in California, so Henry was taking advantage of his free time and spending it with his friends. The bar was closing down, and Henry's friends, for reasons that have never been fully explained, dropped Henry off at a gas station around 2 a.m. At 2:28 a.m., Henry's wife in California gets a call from Henry. The call went to voicemail. What I am going to play for you next is the only part of that voicemail that has ever been released to the public. The entire voicemail is apparently longer, but we have not heard all of it. Just this. As you heard, the words are unintelligible. You cannot understand what is being said. There's a lot of shouting and groaning, and then a very disturbing gurgling noise. To me, it sounds like someone is dry heaving, and then some type of liquid is in their throat. Henry's wife reports that at the end of the call, you can hear someone say, "Stop it," right before the call disconnects. Just after Henry calls his wife and leaves that voicemail, he calls his brother. That call was not recorded, but Henry's brother reports that Henry was hysterical and crying during the call, and then it disconnects. Both Henry's wife and his brother are disturbed by the calls, and they try calling Henry back, but they get no answer. The next morning, Henry did not show up for work. He was then reported as missing to the Mounds View Police Department. The police first went to Henry's friend William, the man who had dropped Henry off at the gas station, in the early morning hours before the phone calls. The police are surprised to learn that William has not only Henry's car keys, but his wallet. Why? Because William did not want Henry to drive anywhere that night. Henry was drunk. William tells the police exactly where he dropped Henry off, and the police go to that gas station, which is where they encounter their first problem. William had given them the name for the wrong gas station. The cops go back to William, and he tells them that he dropped Henry off at a Holiday gas station, which is in the opposite direction from the gas station he first led them to. And there's a lot of questions surrounding why and how this mix-up occurred. The police pull Henry McCabe's phone records and find that his phone last pinged in the area of Fridley, which is in the same area as the Holiday gas station. There's a place called Creekview Park in an area, and as you can see, it's densely forested and also has a creek running through it. The police searched the area near the gas station, and they didn't find anything, so then they focused their search at Creekview Park. They found nothing there. Now, Henry McCabe worked for the government. He was a Department of Revenue auditor, and he loved his job. He never missed a day of work. It was very strange that Henry was absent from his job. The police began watching Henry's bank accounts. There was no activity. The FBI got involved because of Henry's position working for the government, and especially with government finances. The FBI investigation went nowhere. 2 months later, a man kayaking on Rush Lake in New Brighton spotted something strange floating in the water. As the kayaker got closer, he could see that it was a body. The man called the police, who arrived and pulled the body from the water, and the body was later identified as that of Henry McCabe. Now, apparently in the voicemail to Henry's wife, the part we haven't heard, he also says, "I've been shot." Well, when Henry's body is found, there are no gunshot wounds. In fact, he's not harmed at all. There are no signs of trauma. The coroner ruled the death as a possible drowning, but the official cause of death is listed as unknown. The gas station where William dropped Henry off is 6 miles from the lake where Henry's body was found. How did he get there? He had no keys, no car, no wallet. And what on earth was going on during that voicemail? Was Henry being attacked? It would have taken Henry 2 hours to walk to the lake from the gas station, but the voicemail came in around 15 minutes after being dropped off at the gas station. Why didn't anyone at the gas station see anything? Why did William drop Henry at the gas station instead of at his own house? If he thought he was so drunk, say Henry wanted to go to the gas station and get more liquor or cigarettes or whatever, William would have to know that Henry would have a very long walk back to his house. And he also had his keys. How was he going to get in the house? And here's the thing. Henry was a happily married man with 2 beautiful kids. He'd been married for 11 years. He was a leader at his job. He showed up early every day, never missed a day of work. Even a night out partying with his friends was a rare occurrence. This wasn't someone living on the edge. What in the world happened that night that caused Henry to leave that terrifying voicemail for his wife? Why did he call his brother hysterical and crying? And how did he end up in the lake? This one really, really sticks with me every time I hear that voicemail because there is just something really dark and eerie about it. And something tells me we just might never know what happened that night. Our next story takes place in Bedford County, Tennessee. Cheryl Daniel had 2 children, and the kids often stayed with her parents, Bubba and Molly McLaren. On the night of September 23rd, 2012, 7-year-old Gage Daniel and 9-year-old Chloe Leverett were staying with their grandparents. It was a Sunday, and the kids spent the day outside playing and riding the ATVs around the property. The following day was a Monday, and the kids had to be at school. So when it got dark, their grandmother brought them inside and the kids started their nighttime routine. At around 9:30 that night, the fire department received a call of a house fire. When firefighters got to the McLaren home, it was engulfed in flames. They worked to put out the fire, and when they did, the remains of both grandparents, the family dog, and even the family bird were found in the ashes. Gage and Chloe's bodies were not in the house. Oh, this story gives me chills. In the beginning, people thought, well, the bodies were small. Maybe they were fully consumed in the fire, but they never found anything. Not a bone, not a tooth, nothing. And this is not possible. If you remember my case on the Sutter children, this episode here, 5 children vanished from a burning house on Christmas Eve and were never found. In that story, I did a lot of research and I go into a lot of fire science and explain why it is not possible for a body to be fully consumed in a house fire. The fire doesn't get hot enough to burn bones. Bones must be destroyed in an incinerator and then crushed in order to turn them to powder. Bodies do not disappear in a house fire. In order for an entire body to be consumed by fire, the fire must reach 5,000 degrees. Most house fires do not get hotter than 2,000 degrees, and that would definitely leave teeth and bones, especially the larger bones of the body. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation issued an Amber Alert for the 2 missing kids. Fire experts were brought in to sift through the debris on multiple occasions just to ensure nothing had been missed. None of the experts ever found proof that the children were in the fire. Cheryl Daniels also believes that her parents would have died fighting for the lives of, You would. I would literally die before I let anything happen to my grandkids. She knows her parents would have died fighting for those kids, and this leads her to think that they were killed before the fire. And here's the thing, you're probably thinking, okay, someone took the kids and lit the house on fire. The fire investigators determined that the fire was an accident. The McLarens had over 30 propane tanks in the basement of their home, and there was evidence that some of the tanks had ruptured. Some of the tanks could have ruptured after the fire broke out, but investigators believe one of those propane tanks actually started the fire. So if the fire was an accident, where are the kids? Or was the fire an accident? There are some that believe it was not. Cheryl Daniel firmly believes that her mother and father were murdered in the home before the fire was set. She says there's no other way anyone could have gotten to her children. Her parents would have died protecting them. Cheryl is convinced that her children are still alive somewhere, that they were taken and sold, but that they are still alive. The police have investigated Cheryl and both of the children's fathers thoroughly and have stated they do not believe they have any involvement in the disappearances. So who took these beautiful little kids and where are they now? This is an age-progressed photo of what the kids would look like 10 years after they vanished. The police are asking that if you have any information at all, you call the TBI at 1-800-TBI-FIND or email tips@tbi.tn.gov. My heart goes out to Cheryl and the fathers and other family members who lost their parents to the fire and lost these kids to who knows what. I hope somebody sees this video that knows something. We are all sincerely hoping for closure on this tragic story. Our final story begins in March of 2015. 26-year-old Elizabeth Salgado, who was a member of the Mormon Church, decided to move from Chiapas, Mexico to Provo, Utah. Provo is, of course, the hub of Mormon activity, and it's also where BYU, Brigham Young University, is located. Elizabeth served a mission for the Mormon Church. Here you can see her wearing her missionary tag. She served her mission in Pachuca, Mexico. After her mission, Elizabeth attended Tuxtla Gutierrez Institute of Technology and earned a degree in industrial engineering. She was a bright girl who was really good at math and science. Elizabeth wanted to be near other Mormons, and she also wanted to learn English. She up and moved her entire life from Mexico, all on her own and speaking little English, but her family said she put her faith in God and she would make her way and that she would also make friends and possibly find a husband in Utah. Elizabeth was not attending BYU. She went to a local privately owned school called Noman Global Language School, where she was studying English. Being new in the area and not speaking the language was difficult for Elizabeth. She didn't have any friends at first, but it wasn't long before she began making connections through the Mormon Church. In April of 2015, Elizabeth went on an outing with the local singles ward, and she was particularly excited because a man she had been on several dates with was going to be at this outing. In the Mormon Church, you're separated by wards, and if you're not married, you're put into what's called a singles ward. The outing took place at Hobble Creek Canyon, which is an outdoor area with beautiful scenery. People love to go hiking and camping there, and it's a really popular place for picnics and, yes, church outings. While Elizabeth was in Utah, she used Facebook to keep in contact with her family, and they spoke every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Elizabeth told her family about the church outing, and after it was over, she messaged them that she had a really good time. She was looking forward to more outings like that with her church group. And then on April 16th, Elizabeth Salgado was walking home from an afternoon class. She left the class and said goodbye to the friends that she had made in that class and began her short walk home. She never made it back to her apartment. Elizabeth vanished in the middle of the day in a busy area of Provo, populated with lots and lots of students and families, and no one saw a thing. Elizabeth lived here at Branberry Apartment Complex, which was just a 3-minute drive from her school. Elizabeth didn't have a car, so for her, it was a 20-minute walk. She sent a text to her uncle, who also lived in Provo, at around 1:30 that afternoon, asking him for a ride to Walmart after she got home. Then, later in the day, after we know Elizabeth had disappeared, her sister got some strange texts from Elizabeth's phone, responding in a way that alarmed her family. It didn't sound like Elizabeth. The next day, her family did not hear from Elizabeth. They didn't hear from her the day after that, and they got concerned. They began calling over and over. They did not get any response, and they knew something was very wrong. The police were alerted and immediately began looking for Elizabeth. They traced her route from her school to her apartment and found nothing. They asked Elizabeth's family if she would have gotten into a car with someone for a ride, but her family said they did not believe she would. On top of that, Elizabeth's walk was right along a bus path, and she had a bus pass. There were 5 bus stops along her walk home, so if she wanted a ride, she could have used the bus pass to get on one of the city buses. Elizabeth had only been in Provo for a month or so and only knew a handful of people. This made it easier for the police to ask those she had contact with where they were when Elizabeth disappeared, and they quickly ruled them out. Elizabeth's sister, Sarah, told police that she received the last text from her sister at around 1:30 Utah time, and that Elizabeth told her she loved her and was just leaving school, and that lined up with the time her classes were finished for the day. But then she got a strange text after that didn't sound like Elizabeth. The Provo police quickly hit a brick wall. This woman literally vanished off the street on a short walk home. Her school was in kind of an industrial area, but you have to remember, this is Provo, Utah. It's not that crime doesn't exist there, but it's Provo. The violent crime rate is lower than other cities of the same size. In fact, Provo, Utah has the 3rd lowest violent crime rate in the nation. The police continued to search for Elizabeth for a week, and then a month, and then a year. They had very little to go on. At one point, some suspicion fell around a construction worker who was working on a project along Elizabeth's walk home. He was a man with a criminal history of violence towards women, but after extensive questioning, he was ruled out. After that, the case went stone cold. And then, sadly, on May 11th, 2018, nearly 3 years following her disappearance, a hiker found the remains of Elizabeth Salgado while hiking where? Hobble Creek Canyon, the same place where she'd been on the church outing just days before. The person that found Elizabeth had stepped off the trail to relieve himself, and there in the bushes, he saw a human skull and clothing. He immediately called the police using his cell phone. 12 days later, on May 23rd, the remains were confirmed to be those of Elizabeth Salgado, and her family was notified. The next day, the police announced an active homicide investigation was underway. The family was offered help by a private investigator named Jason Jensen, who also helped search for Gabby Petito when she went missing. In June of 2018, the family held a memorial service for Elizabeth in Hobble Creek Canyon, where her body was found. Jason Jensen told the media that he would continue looking for Elizabeth's killer. Jason said he had a lead involving the church outing at Hobble Creek days before she went missing, but nothing really came of that. To this day, the disappearance and murder of Elizabeth Salgado remains unsolved. Police cannot even determine a manner of death, but have determined Elizabeth was murdered. They haven't released all information as to why that is. As if this story is not sad and tragic enough, it gets worse. In September of 2021, Elizabeth's aunt, 44-year-old Miriam Salgado, went missing in Zion National Park. Zion is about 40 minutes from my house. I took my patrons there when I went to dinner the other night with my friends. It's a beautiful place that I go to often, even though it's a lot more crowded than it used to be. Everyone wants to see Zion, and I understand that. When Miriam was reported missing, the police began to search for her. Her car was found abandoned on the side of the road Road the day after she was reported missing. It was found near the park, near Zion National Park, but they did not locate Miriam anywhere. The Salgado family was, of course, devastated and could not believe this was happening again. Now, Miriam did suffer from depression, and in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, police found her sleeping in her car. That same car appeared to have broken down near Zion, and so the police began to wonder if Miriam had simply walked away. For a year and a half, the Salgado family held out hope that Miriam would be located. But sadly, on March 4th, 2023, they got the bad news. A hiker found Miriam's body less than half a mile from where her car was found abandoned. Her body was lying in the desert east of Hurricane off Sheep Bridge Road, an unpaved roadway that cuts through the wilderness between Hurricane and Virgin.
A second tragic loss, but some closure tonight for the Salgado family. Missing since 2021, now 44-year-old Miriam Salgado's remains have been found.
Her body was discovered by a hiker over the weekend near Sheep Bridge Road near Virgin. Fox 13 News reporter Jenna Bree explains why this kind of grief is all too familiar for this family.
We don't know why things happen like this. We don't have the answers to that.
Rosenberg Salgado says he was devastated when he heard all that was found of his missing sister were remains.
We're going through a very painful situation that no one will want to go through as a family.
Rosenberg still grieving the death of his niece, Elizabeth.
How is it possible that now two of my family members, they just find the remains?
Elizabeth Salgado was reported missing out of Provo in April of 2015. Her remains were found in Hobble Creek Canyon in Utah County in May of 2018. Her aunt, Miriam Salgado, last seen in August of 2021, and her remains found this past weekend.
Obviously, there is somebody that is out there killing people, you know what I mean? And they killed my niece and my sister. We don't know what happened to her. If there was another crime and if it was the same person that did it to my niece, or we don't know.
Rosenberg says his sister's car was found abandoned the day after his family reported her missing, and he doesn't understand how it took more than a year and a half to find her remains only half a mile from where her car was found.
We just would love to have that justice, like, as soon as possible, right?
Jenna Bree, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Her body was badly decomposed, and the coroner could not determine a cause of death. We do not know what happened to Miriam, and most likely we never will. Was she murdered? Did someone take her? Did she wander off and die? Why would she have died so close to her car? She was in her 40s. She wasn't in bad health. And who took Elizabeth Salgado off the busy streets of Provo in the middle of the day? Where was she murdered? What did she endure? We just don't know. I want to send a lot of love from the Dark Hearts community to the Salgado family. You've all been through something very tragic and traumatic, and we all want closure for you. We hope it's coming your way. Thank you for joining me today on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. I really appreciate your support. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more from me. It helps a lot. If you would, check out my podcasts. I have two. This one is called Dining with Death. This one is called Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. This is the current podcast. I post new episodes every Monday and Wednesday. You can hear both podcasts on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. Thank you so much to my patrons. Your support means the world to me. And as you know, we are in the middle of a fundraiser. You can watch this short video and it will tell you everything you can do to donate a few bucks and potentially help us solve a cold case. Stay safe, my friends, and be kind to each other. And I will see you next time on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Bye.